Welcome to Red Story. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe to new stories every day. I remember the day I first met Caroline like it happened yesterday. She was sitting at a cafe near campus, wearing a floral sundress and reading a thick textbook for her sociology class. Even then, she had this quiet elegance that seemed to give the room a certain glow. We started talking almost by accident. She asked if I had change for a $5 bill, and from that simple exchange, our entire story began. We married a few years later, full of excitement for all the life we had ahead of us. Now, over a decade into our marriage, and with two children, Alexander, age 8, and Emily, age 5, I find myself reflecting on how swiftly things can change. How quickly the sturdy walls of trust can crumble into dust when confronted with secrecy and betrayal. My name is James, and I live in Arlington, Virginia, a suburban city just a stone's throw from Washington, D.C. I work as a real estate agent, showing houses, drafting contracts, and negotiating deals. Caroline works at a marketing agency in downtown D.C. She's a senior project manager. At least that's her official job title. For a long time, I never gave much thought to what her day-to-day looked like because I was content in my role, and she seemed content in hers, or so I assumed. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. We have a comfortable home on a tree-lined street. The kids go to a nearby public school, and our neighbors are a friendly bunch. We host barbecue parties in the summer, exchanging small talk about lawn care and local news. On the outside, we probably appear like your typical American family. An SUV parked in the driveway, a golden retriever named Daisy, and a mailbox, often stuffed with catalogs we never read. But over the last year and a half, something changed in our household. Gradually, Caroline grew distant. It was subtle at first. Maybe she forgot to laugh at my jokes, or she brushed off my attempts to be affectionate with an offhand remark about being tired. Then it became more pronounced. She'd stay late at work more often than not, and her eyes would glaze over when I tried to share something that had happened during my day. One evening, a few months ago, after I tucked the kids into bed, I found Caroline sitting on the couch with her laptop open, staring at some marketing slides. I quietly sat beside her. She must have been lost in thought because she flinched when I touched her shoulder. "Hey, sorry," I said gently. "I didn't mean to sneak up on you." She brushed my hand away, though not harshly. "It's fine," she said, closing the laptop. "I'm just stressed from work. There's a big campaign rollout, and I'm behind on deliverables." "Do you want to talk about it?" I'd asked. She shook her head. "Not really. It's a lot of office drama, deadlines, and you wouldn't be interested." I felt a small sting from her words. There was a time when we used to share everything. I gave her a soft smile and tried not to push. "All right, but if you want to vent, I'm here." It was a short exchange, but it left a hollow feeling in my chest. I told myself it was just work pressure. But as the weeks passed, her mood swings and irritability escalated. She'd snap at me over the smallest things, like if I forgot to buy the almond milk she prefers, or if I accidentally made too much noise in the morning while getting ready. The distance was palpable. I felt like I was living with a stranger, not the woman I had pledged to love and cherish. I began confiding in my best friend, Derek, a buddy from my college days who runs his own graphic design studio across the river in Maryland. Over drinks at a sports bar, I tried to articulate the sense of unease that had taken hold in my marriage. "You know, man, sometimes people just grow apart," Derek said, nursing his beer. "But it's not always catastrophic. Talk to her. Couples therapy might help." "I've tried to talk to her," I replied, swirling my soda straw around a glass of club soda. "She just shuts down, gets defensive, or says she's too tired." Derek gave me a sympathetic nod. "Maybe she's just in a rut. Work can do that to you, especially with two kids at home." I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But something in the pit of my stomach told me it was more than a mere rut. It felt like a chasm had grown between us, and no matter how much I tried to bridge it with affection, understanding, or an invitation to spend time together, she withdrew further. Still, I clung to the idea that maybe it was just a phase, like a long, bleak winter that eventually melts away under the warmth of spring. I wanted so badly to be optimistic. As the months wore on, Caroline's behavior became increasingly puzzling. She was glued to her phone, often smiling at messages she received late at night. If I entered the room, she'd quickly lock the screen or shift the phone so I couldn't see it. When I gently asked about it, she grew unreasonably defensive. One of my coworkers is going through a rough divorce, she explained once, her tone flat and guarded. He needs someone to talk to. You're not the only one allowed to have friends, James. I'm not upset about you having friends, I said carefully. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but you've been distant. She stared at me with an unreadable expression. I told you, it's work stress. I decided not to press the issue further that night. But soon new signs popped up, like a late night phone call, she'd taken the bathroom with the door locked, or how she started smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I remember the faint, spicy musk that clung to her clothes one evening. When I asked about it, she mumbled something about testing a new perfume brand at the office. It seemed like a thin excuse, but I couldn't outright accuse her without evidence. Doubt gnawed at me, and my heart pounded with questions I was afraid to ask. For a long time, I was too scared to confront the possibility that Caroline might be having an affair. Instead, I blamed myself. Was I not exciting enough for her? Did I get too complacent in our relationship? Was I failing as a husband? My search for answers led me to try and reignite the spark between us. I arranged date nights, candlelit dinners at home after the kids were asleep, reservations at our favorite Italian restaurant in Georgetown, tickets to a concert downtown. She accepted some invitations, refused others. Even when she did agree to go, she often arrived late, complaining about urgent tasks at the office. She'd check her phone frequently, her mind clearly elsewhere. One night, I surprised her with a babysitter for the kids and took her to an upscale lounge by the waterfront. I'll never forget how she looked that evening, exquisitely beautiful in a crimson dress, yet somehow still far away. As we sipped our drinks, the tension between us was undeniable. Hoping to break the ice, I lightly touched her hand. It feels like we haven't been able to talk in ages, Care, I said, using the nickname I called her since college. Are you really okay? She gave me a forced smile, withdrawing her hand. I'm fine. Let's not make tonight about heavy stuff, okay? That's fair, I replied, though it stung that she wouldn't open up. We ended the evening early, returning home in silence. I began investigating in my own subtle way, though it felt wrong to snoop. Still, the urge to know was overwhelming. I checked our phone records, but everything looked normal because she was using her personal cell for everything, not our shared plan. I noticed she sometimes deleted her text messages before plugging her phone into charge. Once I caught a glimpse of an unsaved number on her screen, but I didn't get a good look at the messages. Suspicion turned into sleepless nights. I'd stare at the ceiling, mind racing of all the ways she could be cheating. Yet I lacked concrete proof. I tried following her after work once. Feeling like a private detective, I sat in my car outside her office building with the engine off. My hands were trembling. If she caught me, how would I explain myself? But that night, she came out right on time and drove straight home. Nothing seemed off. I began to question my sanity. Maybe Durek was right. Maybe it was just a phase, a culmination of job stress, household responsibilities, and dissatisfaction with routine. Still, a nagging feeling persisted. I started noticing smaller details, a hidden injury receipt in the trash, the fact that she changed her phone passcode when I had always known it before, the way she laughed more openly when texting than she did with me or the kids. One day, as I was doing laundry, a small detail caught my eye. Her blouse had a lipstick stain on the collar that wasn't her color. I knew Caroline typically wore muted pink or nude shades, but this was a deep red. At first, I thought she might have borrowed a friend's lipstick at work, or maybe she tried a new shade, but it still struck me as odd. When I brought it up, she responded too quickly, too dismissively. I was testing products with Rebecca in the office. It got on my collar. Her answer came with a smile that didn't quite meet her eyes. Something was definitely wrong. The turning point came one Friday afternoon about 3 months ago. I came home early to surprise Caroline with flowers, lilies her favorite, hoping to set a positive tone for the weekend. When I stepped inside, I found her in the living room, pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, we can meet next Thursday, she said quietly, not noticing my entrance. No, James doesn't suspect anything. My heart felt like it dropped into my stomach. I froze, not wanting to intrude or alert her to my presence. The kids were in school, and the house was otherwise quiet. She continued talking. I miss you too, she whispered. We just have to be careful. She ended the call. I stood there like a statue in the hallway, clutching the bouquet. My mind went blank, my chest constricted. This was the confirmation I had dreaded. As quietly as I could manage, I stepped back outside and waited a few moments before entering again, this time making noise by jingling my keys. "Caroline, I'm home," I called out, forcing a light tone. She appeared from the living room looking startled. For a split second, her eyes flickered with something like fear or guilt. Then she pasted on a smile. "Hey," she said, "you're home early." "Yeah," I replied softly, offering the lilies. "I wanted to surprise you." She took the flowers, feigning gratitude. "That's sweet. Thank you." I looked at her intently, searching for any sign of deception. She avoided my gaze and hurried to put the flowers in the vase. The air felt thick with unsaid truths. In that moment, I knew I had to find out more. An affair was no longer a distant fear. It was a reality, and I had to confirm who it was and how long it had been going on. I turned to an unlikely ally, technology. Specifically, I purchased a small tracking device that could be placed in her car. It was a desperate measure, but I needed real proof before I confronted her. If she was hiding an affair, I wanted the truth laid bare and no chance for her to spin it. It took me a week to build up the courage. Early one morning, while she was in the shower, I slipped outside and attached the device under the rear bumper. I felt sick to my stomach. I'd always believed trust was the foundation of any marriage. Now I was using spy tactics to catch my wife. Yet the alternative, living in the dark, seemed even worse. For several days, the device showed nothing unusual. Her commute to the office, a stop at the grocery store, a quick trip to the kids' school for a parent-teacher conference. Then, one Thursday evening, she told me she had to stay at the office late. Something about finalizing a marketing proposal. But the tracker showed her leaving the office around 7 p.m. and heading to a downtown apartment complex about 10 blocks from her building. I put the kids to bed, making an excuse that mommy was working late. Then I drove in silence toward that address, my heart pounding like a drum. Streetlights passed in a blur, and I could barely keep my thoughts from spiraling. When I arrived, I parked across the street. That's when I saw her, Caroline, stepping out of her car, wearing a fitted blouse and tight skirt I'd never seen before. She checked her reflection in the side mirror, then entered the lobby of the apartment building. My breathing hitched. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I didn't know what to do. Follow her? Wait outside. Call her phone and see if she lied about her location. My instincts were shouting contradictory orders. Confront her now. No. Stay calm. Get more proof. Confront her again. Over and over. An internal war raged within me. In the end, I waited for about an hour, swirling in a storm of anxiety. Finally, she emerged from the building. A tall, broad-shouldered man in business attire walked with her, guiding her with a hand of the small of her back. They shared a laugh, and then, shocking me to the core, he leaned in and kissed her deeply. She responded with a smile, the kind of smile I hadn't seen on her face in a long time. They stood there in intimate proximity before she walked back to her car. He lingered at the building entrance, watching her drive away. I felt something inside me shatter. This was the proof. It wasn't just speculation. She was cheating on me with someone she worked with, or at least someone from her professional circle. My stomach churned with a mix of rage, heartbreak, and an odd sense of relief to finally have confirmation. That night, I barely slept. Caroline got home around 10 p.m., claiming the same excuse, a busy day at the office. I nodded stiffly and said nothing, my voice locked behind a wall of anguish. I kept seeing her with that man, that intimate gesture between them. It replayed in my mind like a haunting loop. Over the next few days, I tried to remain composed for the children's sake. Alexander and Emily had no idea of the emotional war ripping through me, and I wanted to shield them from it for as long as I could. Caroline acted normal. If anything, she was more polite than usual, as though guilt was spurring her to be kinder. I bided my time, gathering more evidence from the tracker, from small receipts she left in the trash, from cryptic text messages I managed to glimpse if I stood behind her at the right angle. Eventually, a pattern emerged. Every Thursday evening, she claimed to be working late, yet she'd actually meet that man. Michael was his name, or so the text messages hinted, at his apartment. She spent about an hour or two there. They'd likely spend the time together physically and emotionally, doing God knows what, sharing secrets they kept from me. My mind raced with images and scenarios I didn't want to imagine. But how to confront her? A direct accusation might backfire if I couldn't prove everything. And part of me still clung to the hope that maybe she'd end it, come to her senses, and we could salvage what we had. But each day that passed, I realized more and more that we were living a lie, that the woman sleeping next to me had already drifted away. She was no longer my Caroline. The final confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon in our living room. The kids were at a neighbor's house for a play date, so we had the place to ourselves. My chest felt tight as I approached her. She was folding laundry, looking so domestic and ordinary that it was almost surreal. "Caroline," I began, my voice shaking slightly, "we need to talk." She paused, a hint of dread flickering in her eyes. "About what?" I took a steadying breath. "About why you've been distant, and about who you've been meeting on Thursday nights." Her face went pale. The folded shirt fell from her hands. She stared at me, struggling to maintain composure. I don't know what you're talking about." "I know about you and Michael," I said quietly but firmly. "I saw you too. I followed you. I heard your phone call. You've been lying to me for over a year." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For a few seconds, she just stood there, paralyzed by the truth being laid bare. Then tears welled up in her eyes. "James, I cut her off, anger lacing my tone. Don't insult me by pretending I'm misunderstanding something. I literally saw you kissing him, and I've seen the phone records, the messages you thought you erased. I know everything." She sank onto the couch, putting her face in her hands. Sobs racked her body. I wanted to feel pity, but all I felt was a hollow pain. This was the woman I had built a life with, who had promised to love and cherish me just as I had done for her. Yet here we were, the world I knew collapsing under the weight of her betrayal. "Why?" I asked, my throat tight, tears threatening to spill. "Why would you do this to us, to our family?" She looked up, mascara smudged. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you. But I felt trapped. I was bored with our life, bored with being a wife and a mother. Michael made me feel alive again. I didn't plan for it to go this far." I'd let out a hollow laugh. "It went on for a year and a half, Caroline. That's not a fling. That's not a mistake. That's a long, calculated affair." She didn't deny it. Instead, she crumbled further into her guilt. "I know," she sobbed. "I know it's awful. I wanted to stop so many times, but I couldn't. I was addicted to feeling, wanted, desired. I felt like I lost myself in this marriage." The sting of her words cut deep. "Lost yourself?" I echoed, voice trembling. "We have 2 kids, Caroline. We built a life together. If you were unhappy, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't we try counseling or therapy or anything?" She wiped her tears, trying to steady her breathing. I was scared. Scared you wouldn't understand, scared I'd lose even that spark I felt with him. I know how terrible it sounds. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. For a long moment, silence enveloped the room. I felt like I was outside my own body watching this tragedy unfold. My mind flickered with memories. Our wedding day, the birth of Alexander, Emily's first steps, family holidays, lazy Sunday mornings. All those moments felt tainted now. Finally, I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want a divorce." She looked at me, her eyes wide and red. "James, please." I held up a hand. "No. You've been lying to me for over a year. You shattered our trust. I can't stay in a marriage where I'm constantly second-guessing everything you do or say." She dropped her head into her hands again, unable to speak. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Part of me hated seeing her like that, but another part felt a grim sense of justice. She had chosen her path. We spent the next few weeks sleeping in separate rooms. Every conversation was fraught with tension. The children, perceptive as they are, knew something was wrong. They'd ask, "Why is Mommy sleeping in the guest room?" Or, "Are you two fighting?" It broke my heart to see them anxious. We tried to keep it together for their sake. But the heaviness in the air was impossible to hide. Soon I consulted a divorce attorney. Despite the pain, I wanted the process to be as civil as possible for the kids' sakes. Caroline and I agreed to a co-parenting arrangement that would minimize disruption to Alexander and Emily. We attended a few mediation sessions, primarily to handle custody and the division of assets. Each session was emotionally draining, but we managed to keep our composure. I couldn't say the same for what happened behind closed doors. We had our share of shouting matches, nights of tears, and silent dinners that felt suffocating. One day, Caroline came to me in tears, saying she'd broken things off with Michael and was seeking therapy. She asked me to reconsider the divorce. I know it's a long shot, she said, her voice shaking, but I owe it to our family to at least try. I shook my head, the ache in my chest flaring. It's too late, Caroline. I'm sorry, I can't unsee or unfeel this betrayal. She looked utterly broken. I felt a pang of sorrow, but I stood firm. Trust, once shattered, isn't easily rebuilt, especially when the betrayal stretches over 18 months. The final blow was too severe. Now, weeks later, the divorce papers are signed. We're officially ending a marriage that was supposed to be forever. I've moved into an apartment not too far from our old home so I can be close to the kids. Caroline keeps the house for now, although I suspect she might sell it eventually and move closer to her office. Do I hate her? I wish I could say yes, that it would be easier if I had a single emotion like rage to focus on. But the reality is more complicated. I feel sorrow, regret, and a strange kind of empathy, even if I can't forgive her. She was unhappy, and maybe part of it was my fault for not noticing sooner. But the way she chose to handle that unhappiness by seeking comfort in another man's arms was her choice alone. Sometimes, late at night in my new apartment, I stare at the blank walls, remembering the life we shared. I find it hard to comprehend how quickly things unraveled. The kids visit me every other weekend. Alexander is old enough to sense something serious went wrong, like he doesn't quite understand the specifics. Emily just knows that Daddy doesn't live at home anymore, and that breaks my heart. I do my best to assure them both that I love them, that I'm still here whenever they need me, and that none of this is their fault. In the quiet moments of reflection, I think back to that initial spark with Caroline, the college cafe, her gentle laughter, our shared dreams. Those memories feel like they belong to a different world, a parallel universe where we continued to love each other wholly and never strayed from our vows. But that's not this reality. Reality is messy and painful. It's filled with mistakes and heartbreak. I hold on to hope that I'll rebuild my life, that the kids will adapt, and that maybe down the line, Caroline and I can cultivate a peaceful co-parenting relationship for the sake of Alexander and Emily. But our marriage, is gone. It died the moment she chose to hide her truth and lie for a year and a half, leaving me to wonder, guess, and eventually confirm the bitter reality. In time, the searing pain might soften into a dull ache, and perhaps I'll be able to look at Caroline without the sting of betrayal overwhelming every thought. Until then, I take each day one step at a time. I focus on my work, on providing stability for my children, and on finding slivers of solace in friends and family who remind me that life goes on. They say everything happens for a reason, though I'm not sure I believe that anymore. What I do believe is that trust is fragile, and once shattered, rebuilding it is nearly impossible. Love without trust is hollow, and a relationship without honesty is doomed to fail. That's the lesson I've learned. It's a cruel one, but it's real. So this is how our story ends, not with fiery passion or dramatic reconciliations, but with a quiet, devastating collapse and two sets of keys to two different homes. And maybe after all the pain, acceptance might finally set me free. The final papers are signed. Our divorce is official, and all I'm left with is the echo of what once was and the sober realization of what will never be again.